Hello, Houchin Heroes, and anybody else tuning in. I'm Rachel, and I'm with the Out for Blood podcast. I'm the marketing manager at Houchin, and I have two guests with me today. I have Martin, our COO with Houchin, and then I also have Howie Long. We have a special story we're going to be sharing today. He is a paramedic in town in Kern County, and also was an attendee of the Route 91 uh, festival where there was a shooting in Las Vegas. So we're going to get into more details, but we're going to start off with a program that we're partnering up with blood banks all over the country. It's called the BERC program, and Martin's going to go into more details about that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about it. So it's called the BERC program, and it stands for Blood Emergency Readiness Corps. And it's really, as of today, it's a joint venture with 6 other blood centers, so 7 blood centers total. And really, our mission is to always be prepared in the event of any kind of mass tragedy or trauma, such as the Route 91 shooting. Because what we've experienced in the blood banking world is that you can never anticipate these things happening, and you can really never be ready for it. And we're going to hear a very, very specific example and experience from Howie. But as blood banks, typically what ends up happening, and we saw this on 9/11, is that something like this will happen. And then for days and weeks after, people want to come in and help, and they want to donate blood to help those people that were impacted. But the challenge is that the blood isn't really needed 3 to 4 weeks afterward. It's needed when the tragedy happens. So when tragedy strikes, that's when we're scrambling to try to collect the blood. And that's what this program is trying to do. It's trying to be ready for today, and then also have some elements of it where we can communicate this information and share with people that these things are still happening, because we're in a little bit of a different world now. And I think as a society, we're getting a little desensitized to these things happening around the world. And there's so much happening in the media and so much information and just so much noise going on that sometimes when things happen, they don't get the kind of attention that they deserve. And it doesn't always lead to more collections to help these people that are in need. So
Yeah. So really, we're just wanting to be prepared for any situation. And at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we want to make sure lives are being saved. And so we want to help people that are experiencing something that's outside of our county, um, because they'll help us if we're in that situation. Hope we're never in that situation, but
Mhm.
at least we would be prepared if we were. And so we can go ahead and get into your testimonial. And I can't believe it's already almost the 4th-year
Yeah.
anniversary of the Vegas shooting.
October 1st will be 4 years.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's it's crazy to me because we had um I personally knew a lot of people that were affected that day and were attending the concert. And I mean, you don't get over these situations. It's something that's always in the back of your mind. And I'm sure I mean, the anniversary every year. I'm sure you reflect on it all the time. So if you can just introduce yourself, tell what you do, and then we can get into what happened that night.
My name's Howie. I'm a EMT, but I wasn't there that night as an EMT. I was a regular concert goer
Hmm.
that night. Then it happened. Like I said, October 1st is the 4th-year anniversary of it, and I've been an EMT for 5 years. So I had just barely finished all my EMT schooling when that had happened.
Wow. Um, so what was going through your mind when you realized what was happening? Because this doesn't happen to people often. This is what you see in the movies. You don't ever think of yourself being in a situation like this. So what was going through your mind when you realized that the situation wasn't good?
Yeah, at first nobody knew what it was. People were saying it was firecrackers or it was the speakers popping or it was part of the show. So nobody was running or trying to hide or go anywhere. Everybody was just standing still. And then they had turned all the house lights on. So everybody was looking around and then we heard more shooting, more shots going off. So everybody kind of just got down on the ground and was thinking we're all safe if we get down. Everybody was saying, get down on the ground. So everybody got down low, and I had my wife with me. So I was making sure that she got down. And then I was trying to look around to see where it was coming from. And then you can hear just more shooting, just rapid firing going on. And you can almost see it going down into the crowd. So then that's when I looked to make sure my wife wasn't hit, and I wanted to help her get up. And I helped her get up. I was like, we got to go. We're not safe just being sitting here on the ground.
Yeah.
And then I looked back and I could just see like a wave of people. Everybody was just getting up and running because everybody's realizing just being
What's
on the
going on?
ground's not safe. You got to get out of there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I was following my wife to make sure we can go, and we started heading to a corner. And that we had been there in that area earlier that night, and I know it's a dead end. We don't know where no emergency exits are or anything like that. In the corner we're heading to, I know it's a dead end, but I'm just making sure my wife's getting out of here. And then she stops, and I run right into her. Somebody had fell, and she was helping that person get up so didn't get trampled because here comes the crowd, and everybody's just going everywhere.
Mhm.
And then we went to that dead end, and they had knocked the temporary fencing down, and we were out into a parking lot. So me and her, I made sure we're going. We get out into the parking lot, and there's a car that's just sitting there idling. I remember seeing the exhaust and the taillights on. So me and my wife jumped in the back seat. I was telling the driver, "Go, we got to get out of here." And then before he could take off, the rear driver door opened. A guy gets in, and he's shot in the side. He's holding his side. So I switched places with my wife so I can get next to him. I was holding direct pressure. And then I told the driver, got to take us to the hospital, take him to the hospital. And then, like I was telling you earlier, my EMT skills kind of kicked in. So I started checking him out. And there wasn't no exit wound. He was just shot in his side, blood going down his leg. So took him to the closest hospital. And it was late at night. You know, the shooting started at 10. So this was probably getting in 11, closer to midnight. We get to the hospital, and it's just come to find out it wasn't even a full hospital. It's just like a urgent care kind of place. Had one doctor, one nurse, and one guy at the desk in the emergency room that just like takes your name when you get there kind of thing. And there was already a bunch of people coming in when we got there that other people had brought from the concert that had been shot. And that hospital was already full in the back with people that had already been shot. So me and my wife kind of set up a triage right there in the waiting room, just try to get some organization going because everybody's just running around. Try to set everybody down, and I'm trying to tell the guy that I need a first aid kit, EMT bag would have been nice. They don't have nothing in the waiting room. So the guy, he went and got me some towels and tried to get me some gloves and give me everything that he could. And me and my wife just started treating people right there in the waiting room. Probably 15, 20 people. I think I lost count, just.
And they were just showing up, right? Because
Yeah,
you showed
there's
up with
a
the first guy,
a
and then people
pickup
were just
truck.
coming in.
I remember a white pickup truck pulls up, and he's got like 5 people in the bed of his truck. He just unloads it, and he took off. He was just transporting people from over there,
Yeah.
just bringing them to the hospital. And we were kind of organizing, putting people, and then the more serious ones were going in the back with the nurse, and then whatever we could help out right there in the waiting room, we did what we could.
Yeah. And when you're treating those people, Howie, like what's your focus? Are you actually trying to treat them and like work on the wounds, or are you just trying to stop bleeding and stabilize it?
Yeah, just trying to figure out which ones are the worst, which ones we can help. And, because we're limited on medical supplies and what we have. So kind of just organizing it from best to worst, you can kind of say. But yeah, and then the ones that we can help right there are the ones that need to go back immediately.
Mhm.
I was kind of working with the nurse on that, telling, which ones need to go, which ones that can help patch right then.
Yeah. And were they having to transport people from that urgent care out to hospitals, like people that actually needed like blood transfusions or surgery and that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of other hospitals that were just getting a lot of people sent to over there too.
Yeah. And were all of the injuries you were seeing, were they all gunshot victims, or were there other
Yeah.
other injuries that were coming through?
No, most of the ones that I seen were all bullet wounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know you mentioned that when you guys were escaping, like they knocked down the temporary fence, and people, I'm sure, probably were getting stepped on and
Yeah,
trampled on,
trampled and
unfortunately, and
a
that
lot
kind
of
of
that.
thing. And I think that's something that people don't realize when these things are happening, is that there are other injuries besides just those wounded from
Just the
Right.
from a
panic.
gunshot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being an EMT when we were there at the concert, I remember because I did kind of check it out. There was a first aid station set up. I think it had one EMT working there because I remember telling my wife, "Look, there's an EMT working. This is where the station is." But
Mhm.
just for that concert, that many people, they're just like doing, you know, little minor stuff right there. And then that thing got overrun quick. You know, you're talking over 500 people injured. So that wasn't prepared for that big of event.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the whole just being prepared, the preparedness part, we weren't prepared for anything like that. We didn't have a map that like showed emergency exits or where to go or where's the hospitals, or we didn't have any of that kind of information. So now being prepared, looking back, me and my wife, like if we go out to dinner, we always look, okay, where's the emergency exit at? Where we parked at? Where we're going to sit at? That kind of thing.
You have to, after being in a situation
Yeah.
like that. It's scary, but it's also, I wish nobody ever went through that situation, but it's amazing hearing how so many strangers got together to help each other. I mean, you got into a random person's car and pulled in another random victim that was shot, and you helped him, and you had to flip that switch from being an attendee at this concert, and you had to automatically go into EMT mode to help, because I mean, you couldn't really do anything in that situation. Like I said earlier, you have to either choose to run, fight, or flight kind of situation. So it's, I mean, absolutely heart-wrenching hearing some of these stories, and really all of these stories. I mean, this it's just an absolutely horrible situation.
And going back to like what you said with the blood, there's a lot of people that came to donate like days and weeks after, but there was people that were bleeding out right then that needed blood right then.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. You know, you can't tell a patient, hey, your blood's not here. You know, we gotta wait till tomorrow or the next day when people show up. And that's the really challenging thing with what we face, especially in situations like this, because how many people were actually shot in this? It was over 500, right? In that ballpark.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got 500 people. Who knows how many of those actually need a transfusion? There's a good chance that a lot of them need some kind of treatment and some blood. And nobody has 500 or 1,000 units just sitting around waiting for something like this to happen.
But somebody that needs it, they think that the hospital should just have
Exactly.
it.
We just expect the hospitals to have it. And, you know, in reality, that's our job as blood bankers, is that our job is to have that blood ready to go, but you just can't anticipate something like this.
One of the things that people don't realize is even with today's science, blood is not something that you can duplicate. The only way any hospital is going to get any blood is from somebody donating.
From volunteers, yeah.
Can't be manufactured.
Yeah.
And then, like I was talking to you earlier about the program that you're doing with setting some aside, even that has to be
Has to keep
rotated.
getting cycled, yeah.
Yeah,
'cause it's got a
you
shelf
can't even
life.
set some to the side to say that's just for that. Even that's going to have to be rotated, because you can't even set it to the side and save it.
Yeah. And then,
So-
you know, even when you set it to the side, you're I mean, hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. That's always our hope, right? We don't want anything like this to ever happen. But, you know, God forbid these things end up happening. You don't know what the magnitude is going to be like, and you don't know how much blood is really going to be needed. So you can really never prepare for everything. You just hope that what you have is enough to soften the burden of those that have to, you know, deliver the treatment. So you can then continue to get more blood in. And that's really what's special, I think, about this program. With our geographic positioning with the other blood banks we're partnering with, we've got pretty good access pretty much across the country. So we'll be able to leverage that network to get blood to wherever something happens as quickly as possible, and just use this inventory to backfill those that are sending the blood in. Because typically when things like this happen, it's every all hands on deck type situation, and we're looking at everybody. But our goal with the program is to really emphasize that, hey, if something like this happens, we're here, we're ready to send this blood your way. Along with anything else that we need to do, should we need to, you know, acquire more blood than what we have on hand.
Yeah, now a program like that's going to be real important. If something does happen, you're not trying to have people come weeks and days later when you need it right away.
Have it right away, yeah. And I mean, it hit close to home. Even though Las Vegas is 4 or 5 hour drive from Bakersfield, I mean, there was a lot of people from Kern County at that concert. So it's just, you just never know when something like that's going to happen, when it's going to affect your family, your friends. It's scary.
Yeah, you never know if it could happen here just as easy as it happened there. You never know.
Yeah.
That's why I think your program's a good deal. And if you can bring everybody together in on it and work
Mhm.
together, it's gonna help out for the big cause at the end.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize too. You're talking all the different blood types too.
Yeah.
It's not just. A lot of people forget about that too. They think just donate one type of blood and it covers everybody. You have to,
Mhm.
have all the different types too and have it
Yeah, that's a good point.
fresh.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too is that O negative blood type is one of the rarest, if not the rarest, because it's universal. And typically in situations like this, doctors don't have a lot of time to blood type the person to get their matching blood type. They're pulling O negative off the shelf because it's universal, and they're trying
Mhm.
to get blood into these people. And with it being the hardest blood type to go recruit for and to collect, when something like this happens, it depletes that inventory very, very quickly. So, God forbid, lightning strike twice, you're in a bind at a
Oh,
hospital if
Mhm.
you're using that much blood, O negative blood, all at once.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know their blood type too. So,
Yeah.
in situations like that, just like Martin said, it just depletes the O negative blood supply so quickly. So, again, it's good to have a program where we have other blood banks providing this blood for us so that we are prepared in these situations.
hmm the other element of this that I think is really important is that, we do want the blood right away as much as we can, but we still also want to leverage to restore the supply afterward.
Hmm.
And that's an element that I think is missing in today's world is that the information is just not getting shared enough. Stories like yours just aren't being shared enough for people to see, these things happening and really understand the magnitude of the impact because you see some shootings and sometimes the numbers aren't to the scale of this Vegas shooting and it's just 20 or 30 people were wounded in a shooting, but in reality it was maybe 20 or 30 people were shot, but then you have all these other people that were dealing with this chaos and all of the running and people being injured from falling and hitting things or being hit. So it's a much bigger impact I think than people understand when they see situations like this. And shootings aren't all of it, obviously. You've got
right.
other bigger disasters and
Hmm.
other kinds of tragedies that could happen. But a lot of times we only focus on those that were directly impacted by the event and not looking at the extent of those that were also impacted, but not directly, sort of indirectly. And this Vegas shooting is a good example of that.
Right. Yeah. Because where we were, that hospital got overran quickly, and they just kept coming in. And
Mhm.
I was thinking to myself while I was working on people is gotta quit bringing people eventually. Eventually is, and I didn't realize at that time how many people were injured. They just kept coming and coming and coming,
Mhm.
And they're
and
probably
there
all
was like,
separated from their families and their friends
Mhm.
that were with them at the concert.
and it started to feel like there was no end to it with people coming in, and then the hospital's already struggling with what they had at the beginning.
Mhm. And you never want a hospital or a doctor or anybody to be in a situation where you say, I've got a dozen victims, but I've only got enough supply for half of them.
Hmm.
Right.
That's the real scary part about all this stuff is that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about people's lives at stake when something like this happens, and we don't want to be in that situation.
Well, and it depends on the severity of the wound as well, because I
Mhm.
mean, one victim could end up using 50 units of blood. So
Mhm.
that's could be 50 donations right there and just for one person. So that's I mean, just that night, I'd be curious to know how many transfusions were used on that day.
Mhm.
I did a tourniquet on one guy that was shot through the femoral artery,
Mm.
and he come walking in, and lady was helping him walk in, and he just leaving a trail behind him all the way. And he set him down in the waiting room, and I had to put a tourniquet on his leg just to stop it because he was basically going to bleed out right there in the waiting room.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's scary.
And then I called the nurse because I knew it was a femoral artery. He was hit because he's just pouring out. And I got
Mhm.
the nurse, and she said he's going to have to wait. There's worse off than him back there.
Oh gosh,
Oh
that's
gosh.
scary.
So what'd you
Yeah.
do in that situation? Did you have to wrap
Yeah.
it, stop the bleeding?
He had a long sleeve shirt that he had taken off that he was holding direct pressure on it, but it was just pouring through it. And I actually took his long sleeve shirt, and that's what I made a tourniquet above it, and then just tied it tight as I could. With him sitting down in the waiting room, I could see the puddle on his foot just getting bigger and bigger. And I just kept squeezing that tourniquet tighter and tighter until it stopped. And I
Mhm.
just told him to keep holding the pressure until they can get him back there.
Now, were there multiple people with experience like you in the waiting room, or was it just you helping all of these victims in the waiting room?
The nurse came in a lot, to check, but she was mostly busy back there, and I'm just trying to organize everything for her and see who needs to go back. But there was not really, it's just there was people that came that were helping out, but not really any EMTs or doctors or anything.
Oh.
My wife helped out a lot. That's what I was telling you. I went into EMT mode to help people, and my wife went into mom mode. So
Hmm.
she was organizing, telling everybody where to sit down and organizing everything. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there was not really any other EMTs or anything there. I know there was a doctor in the back, but I never saw him. The nurse came through a few times with ones that they were rushing back there. I talked to her a few times, but other than that, it's just me and her and other people trying to help. They didn't really know what to do. But there was a lot of people there trying to help.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wish you weren't there in that situation, but it was almost a blessing for some of those people that you were there and you had the experience that you did. Even though it was only a year experience, you at least knew what to do to help stop the bleeding for the one that had a wound in his artery. And it is probably a blessing to a lot of people that you were there and helped them in that situation.
My wife still talks to the original guy that got in the car with us. She got his
Mm.
number because he was calling his parents on the phone while we were in the car while I'm trying to treat him, and my wife took the phone away from him and told his parents that we're gonna stay with him the whole time and he'll be fine and we'll take care of him. So my
Mhm.
wife still talks to him to this day and checked on him. And he turned out to be okay.
Well, and I'm sure your family and your friends probably saw the news and was probably checking in on you, and you're busy taking care of people that were injured, and you probably didn't have the time to respond. So it's a scary situation for you guys, for your family, and so many people were dealing with that day.
Right.
Yeah, scary situation.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
That's really impactful. Um, what would you tell somebody that doesn't donate blood? Do you ever talk to people about the importance of donating blood, having seen the impact of it firsthand like that?
Yeah, because a lot of people just don't realize that is the blood's going they just expect the blood to be there for them at the hospital. But if you change that rule and saying you're only going to get what you donated, how are you going to look then? Is kind of how I
Oh,
told people.
that's an interesting spin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how many gallon are you? I'm a 2 gallon. So
Yeah.
I would tell everybody donate.
Yeah.
And so I always try to use that analogy toward it.
Yeah.
So you expect it to be there for you. Well, how much have you donated? What
That,
if
Yeah.
you only get what you donated?
that
Yeah.
really puts it into
Yeah.
perspective.
It
I've
really
never thought
does.
of it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So
So,
if you donated nothing, but you expect for it to be there for you,
mhm.
but you could donate and be there for somebody else and also there for you if you did have an emergency.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, like you were saying before, it takes a while to for to build up the blood. Even if you're donated, you can't just go do. You have to. It takes a while for your body to build it up, and a while for you guys to even build up a supply, and
Hmm.
even that's got a shelf life.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And you have to need more coming in, just like your body slowly produces more that you can donate. It's just like it's more that you guys need just to keep your supply full.
Hmm.
Hmm. And it might not necessarily even just be whole blood. Some might have needed platelets or
Oh, yeah.
plasma. So platelets and plasma take a longer process than whole blood, and it's not as common for people to come in and donate it. But we want to always make sure that all blood products are on the shelves given these situations.
Yeah, typically it's a cocktail of those products that get put together
Hmm.
for the donors, depending on the need. Depending on how much red blood they need, there'll be some associated plasma that needs to go with that, and then potentially some platelets that go with it. So yeah, it's really really important.
Everybody should know their blood type and everybody should donate and be prepared.
Hmm.
You never know when a situation could come up.
Yeah,
Well, I'm thank you so much for sharing. I got the chills a couple times, and I thought I might have had to bring my tissues today. So we appreciate you sharing your story, and I think this is really going to put it in perspective to show how important the BERC emergency readiness is for not just us but other blood banks, and we hope that other blood banks join us as well at some point because again, we're all in this together, and we want to make sure that in these situations that we have help from strangers, just like um, how a stranger took you to the hospital and how you helped a stranger. We want to help. We want to help everyone.
Mhm.
I think
So,
it's a great program. You guys all coming together, and anything I can do to help, let me know.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
hopefully this story reaches some people and they understand the impact that donating blood can have in situations like this, and then in all other kinds of situations.
Mm. Well, thanks again, Howie. And thank you, Martin,
Mhm.
for explaining the BERC program and just being here today. Um, and thank you for everybody tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe to our Out for Blood podcast. We'll be talking about some great topics next time. So make sure you tune in on future episodes. So, again, I'm Rachel. I'm the marketing manager, and we hope to see you again soon.